The last two are kind of categorized as promising methods of adapting practice. And here we have expectations and attachment style. And this is interesting because there's a good argument out there that expectations could be a function of other things. But for the purposes of this research and the moderate treatment effect that they found, expectations had to do with the hope and the confidence that a client has when they engage in a particular treatment track, right? So it sounds a lot like related to that allegiance factor that we looked at the beginning of our time. How much hope and confidence can we extend as practitioners, as change agents, so that the expectation of success is as high as possible among the persons we're serving? How much inspiration can the folks we serve get from ourselves, other people at their, peer-led lived recovery support group, to where their expectations of their successful recovery can be ramped up as high as possible? Because the higher that confidence and hope and expectation can be, what the research shows is that the stronger and the better their treatment outcome will be. If they have low expectations, chances are that's going to be the result of their treatment, will be a low kind of treatment gains. If they have high expectations, that seems to correlate with a higher degree of hope and confidence, and subsequently greater success in whatever treatment that the person is engaged in. Last one is attachment style. We're going to be ending with this one. I thank everybody for hanging in there. And this looked at a couple of different extremes as well. What the researchers called attachment secure kind of personality and attachment anxious type of personality. And what's the difference there? Well, first let's look at the effect size. Attachment security had a very moderately strong effect size. Attachment anxiety had a negative effect size, which means that the more attachment anxious somebody is, the less well they are likely to do. So attachment style really has a lot to do with somebody's relational development history, okay? And any of you who may work with trauma survivors know that depending on the age of interpersonal trauma and the disruptive impact that had on what would otherwise be more normal and healthy, attachment, personality development, has a lot to do with arriving in adulthood being either attachment secure or attachment anxious. So if somebody came up developmentally and their primary caregivers that in a reasonably healthy family scenario they would bond with and have strong attachments with, and then having mastered that attachment ability with their primary caregivers, as they get older, they're able to transfer that attachment ability to friends and to potential, partners and to other folks in a way that allows them to have satisfying, emotionally and psychologically satisfying human relationships. But somebody who's, let's say, was sexually abused at a young age by a caregiver that they were supposed to be able to trust, that's kind of one of the big examples of somebody who would arrive at adulthood being attachment anxious, right? They didn't go through normal developmentally healthy process of being able to trust and attach with primary caregivers in that scenario. And so they continue to struggle with that capability to attach to other individuals in their adult life, be it a friend, be it a potential romantic partner, be it a therapist, okay? And so if, again, some of the takeaway here, some of the practice implications are, do we screen for that? Do we assess for that? Do we evaluate for that? To the extent that we know that it's there, and depending on, there's thankfully an increasing amount of attention being paid to trauma as an important area that needs to be taken into consideration for trauma informing all services. So that would be one area where there's kind of a natural convergence with, okay, if I know that my person suffered interpersonal trauma during earlier developmental stages of their life, it may be a good bet that that person is attachment anxious. So what's the difference in adapting our practice to treat the attachment secure person versus the attachment anxious person? The attachment anxious person typically needs a lot slower, maybe more gentle, more incremental types of progress or approaches with regard to their treatment. Because trustworthiness and safety are issues. And those are issues or questions that need to be answered and answered well if that person is going to be able to fully engage and go through that particular treatment in a way that they can be successful. So that's kind of the practice implication for treatment anxious folks. Treatment secure folks can sometimes go to the other extreme of being so kind of self-assured and assured that they can get support here or there or anywhere, that they may be really kind of dismissive of needing your help as a practitioner because they've got drinking buddies and using buddies that they can go get help from, right? As one example. Or any number of other people. So they may be very dismissive of your attempts to engage with them around kind of relational issues. And that may be the case where we need to do a good job of managing our emotional reactance, our own emotional response to somebody who's dismissive, not take it personally, hang in there with that person and engage until maybe a chink in their armor becomes apparent and they're willing or they see themselves as needful of the services that you have to offer, as one example. Sometimes attachment secure people are very emotionally demonstrative, and they may in fact have learned to be that way, and that may or may not be always appropriate in social situations. So they may need help with gaining skills to contain or manage their own emotions, especially strong negative emotions, relative to their attachment style. So again, the takeaway is with many of these practice adaptations is to answer the question, do we screen or assess for this appropriately? And then do we have the knowledge and the array of services that would be useful to match people with the way that they are particularly aligned along one or more of these domains in order to help them be as successful as possible in their treatment. So we're going to wrap up with some conclusions of the second task force on evidence-based therapy relationships. One was the therapy relationship makes substantial and consistent contributions to outcome independently of the specific type of treatment. So it matters, and it matters more than the treatment modality in most cases. The therapy relationship accounts for why folks improve or fail to improve at least as much as a particular treatment method. And I would argue, from the evidence I've seen, more. Practice and treatment guidelines should explicitly address therapist behaviors and qualities that promote the most effective therapy relationship possible. And then efforts to just plug and play a manualized evidence-based practice are incomplete without also taking into effect all these relational factors that we've been talking about. And it's possible to plug and play a manualized evidence-based practice and get terrible results if these relationship factors are neglected or ignored. And conversely, to the extent that we maximize them, we can end up with much more positive outcomes for those that we're working with. Adapting or tailoring the relationship to specific treatment or patient characteristics enhances the effectiveness of our treatment. And therapy relationship is not the only variable in the equation, right? It acts in concert with the treatment method, the patient characteristics and the goodness of fit and all the stuff that our clients bring to the table, as well as our practitioner qualities. All of that works together in determining effectiveness, and all of those aspects should be optimally considered if we want to position those we serve well to be as successful as possible. And then lastly, there's different elements that we've worked our way through that have different levels of treatment effect associated with them based on existing research. And there's different methods of adapting therapy interventions to particular patient characteristics. These are not so solid and with so much research evidence behind them that they should become prescriptive to the exclusion of those other factors that we talked about in item 6. But these are valuable pointers to how we can leverage what we do know from the state of the research as it exists today that can help us be as effective as possible as practitioners with those that we serve. So thank you for spending this time, and I wish you all well in your ongoing practice experiences.